The 103rd edition of Tour de France starts July 2nd with 21 stages taking riders all the way to the finish line in the Champs-Élysées on the 24th of July. Here now to discuss Tour de France's futures and who he thinks will win the coveted maillot jaune for the Tour 2016 Tour de France is Ian O'Sullivan from cyclingbetting.co.uk. Ian, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Natalie. Pleasure as always.
Now, the last Grand Tour, the Giro d'Italia, was won by Vincenzo Nibali from Astana Pro Team. Here's a long shot bet to win the Tour de France, 34 at Bet365. Why is that?
Well, basically, when it comes to Grand Tours, a team will select one leader. When it came to the Giro d'Italia this year, Nibali was the leader, and the whole team get behind him and support him to help him win the race. And his teammate Fabio Aru, who came second in the Giro d'Italia last year, who won the Vuelta a España actually as well. So a big race that he won last year, was elected as the team leader for the Tour de France this year. He's a young up and coming star for the Italians and for the Astana team, and they have to share leadership around amongst the team. So the agreement generally is that you get to go on leader for the Tour of Italy, Vincenzo, and Fabio is the leader for the Tour de France. So he'll be a support rider, as good as he is, and as you said, just winner of the Giro d'Italia and one of the best riders in the world. He'll be riding in support for his team captain in the Tour de France. That's not to say that he's not without a chance, and anything can happen in 3 weeks of the Tour de France. And if Fabio Aru has a bad first week, it could be that Vincenzo Nibali suddenly becomes the team captain. They do this if a rider gets sick or has an accident or something. They can change order mid-race if they have to, but you just got to bear in mind that Vincenzo Nibali had to go very, very deep in the Tour of Italy to win. He was, I think, something like 5 minutes behind the leader with only 2 or 3 stages to go, and he pulled off an astonishing feat to win the Giro from where he was. So he had to go very deep. He'll have suffered fatigue from that. So it's going to be an interesting one to watch, because in my mind Fabio Aru isn't in great form this year, so it may be that Vincenzo might get the chance.
Yeah, should we consider then Vincenzo's odds 34 Bet365 as our long shot bet?
Yeah, I mean it's one of those where you're kind of taking a chance almost that something will happen to Fabio Aru rather than that Vincenzo will have a fantastic race, because I think circumstance will dictate whether it becomes a good bet or not.
Yeah.
If all goes well for Fabio Aru, Vincenzo will have to toe the party line, and he'll have to toe team orders. But anything can happen out on the road, and from that point of view, maybe a small bet on Vincenzo 34 might be one that'll give you a bit of excitement coming into the last week if he's still in contact and Fabio Aru has slipped away for some reason.
All right. Well, coming in second and third, respectively, in the Giro d'Italia was Colombian Esteban Chavez and Alejandro Valverde from Spain. Now, Chavez won't be competing, but Valverde is priced even longer to win, 81 Bet365. Where do you see him coming in?
Well, Valverde is in exactly the same situation as Nibali. He is here in the race to support Nairo Quintana, who's the second favourite for the race. It's going to be all about Quintana for the Movistar team, and Valverde is a fantastic rider. He's won everything in the sport almost, and he's still winning races at, I think he's 34 years of age or something now. But he's also a very, very experienced captain, a very experienced man on the road to have by your side. He will know when to look after Quintana when it comes to big mountains. He will chase down attacks for him. So he's basically, if you're looking at Nibali and thinking he's a good bet at 34, then Valverde looks a good bet. But at 80s, if something happened to Quintana. But I think of the two, I think Valverde is a much longer shot, hence the odds being much longer. I think, if anything, Valverde will go there and maybe try and take a stage win or two. He's great at punchy uphill finishes, short little uphill runs to the line that are fought out amongst what they call the puncheurs. And it may be that if he has done his job for the day of looking after Aru, and Aru's safe coming to the line, that Valverde is given his chance to go and maybe take a stage win. And I think he'll be happy with that if he gets a stage win or two, finishes in the top 10, because that's the thing. If he's looking after Quintana and helping Quintana to finish high up in stages, it probably means that he's going to be one of the first maybe 10 or 15 finishing on most of the big important mountain stages, because he'll be naturally, riding near the front of the race to look after Quintana.
Yeah.
And as a result, he could pull himself into the top 10. So he might be one to look at from the top 10 betting point of view.
All right, and then we will discuss that also. We're going to do a Tour de France prop betting market video, so do check that out on our channel. Now, the three riders favoured to win, they did not compete in Giro d'Italia. That's Chris Froome. He heads the betting again this year, understandable, given he was the winner last year. Now, he did his warm-up in Critérium de Dauphiné a few weeks back in France and won. He's priced 2.5 with Boyle Sports to win. Then we've got Nairo Quintana closely following, priced 2.75 Ladbrokes, and Alberto Contador, who is saying he is going to retire at the end of this year, and he's third favourite, priced along a 7.5 Boyle Sport. Would you say this is a three-legged horse race here, or are there other riders that we should keep our eyes on?
Well, according to the betting, obviously, as you say, it looks like it's between the three. But as we've seen in the Tour of Italy just now, Wilco Kelderman almost won the race. I think he had dropped to 1-5 favourite going into the second last stage. He had a large lead. Before the race, he was 150-1. Esteban Chavez took over the lead from him going to the last stage, and I think he was 66-1 before the race started. So there's no such thing as, anybody bigger than 10-1 or anybody outside the top three favourites haven't got a chance in these kind of races. They do. Things happen. Riders, can have a fantastic day. Other riders can have bad days. And just coming back to the top three, yes, of course, Chris Froome, two-time winner. He's won, two of the last three. The one that he didn't win was because he crashed out of it in 2014. He's favoured by right. He's top class. He's a brilliant climber. There are two time trials in the race, both of which will suit him pretty well. And it's it's going to be everybody versus Chris Froome type of thing. He's got a very, very strong team with him. They've picked an incredibly strong team. They've left out riders out of the Team Sky squad who would probably walk into many of the teams, that are in the Tour de France already. Riders like Nicolas Roche, Leopold Koenig, they have a super strong team here, and it becomes vitally important when it comes towards the end of the very, very tough stages that you have teammates around you to look after you.
Yeah.
His big rival then, of course, second in the betting, and there's not much in it in the betting this year, is Nairo Quintana. And Quintana has finished second both times that Chris Froome has won it. So he is yet to get one over on Chris Froome in this race. Quintana has been in really good form this year. He's just recently won the Route du Sud, his first race back after a long training block in his home country of Colombia at altitude. And he basically, as far as I could see, he was toying with the opposition in the Route du Sud. He won a time trial, which is not really his forte. So he showed he's got fantastically good legs. He's got a superb team with him as well. The Movistar team, as I said, Valverde is with him, and the rest of the squad are built to support him in the mountains. So it's a very close call between the two of them. I personally would love to see Quintana finally win it. I think he's well capable of doing it. Alberto Contador, he says he's retiring at the end of the season, but then he also has been hinting that maybe I won't, and there's talks that he's actually setting up his own team, and maybe coming back with his own team. But whether they get an invitation to next year's Tour de France is another question. But he's been sort of hit and miss this year, but I think he's done 5 stage races this year, and he has finished first, second, third, fifth. He hasn't been outside the top 5 in the general classification of the 5 one-week stage races he's done. So he's clearly in good shape as well. But in the Critérium de Dauphiné, Chris Froome had him, well in his pocket. He accelerated away on the one big stage that won the race for him. Chris Froome attacked. Contador couldn't go with him. Simply as that. He finished, I think, 30 or 40 seconds behind him that day, and that was the end of it for him. But so if something like that happens in a tour where Chris attacks and Contador loses 30 or 40 seconds every time he attacks, he's going to finish quite a way behind him.
Now, where do you see the race being won and lost?
There's the old cliche in cycling that you may not win the race on this particular stage, but you could certainly lose it. And that can apply to many of the stages here. And by that, they mean that you could have a bad day. You could find that, that a stage doesn't suit you. Something can happen, and anything can happen out on the road, as they say. But there are numerous stages here where the race will be won and lost. Very interestingly, is that on the very second day, they're in the north of France, up around La Manche, which is just on the channel between Britain and France, and the winds that whip in from the sea can be quite serious. Winds with cycling in a nervous bunch can often result in splits in the peloton. And if you get a split in the peloton and the front of the peloton really pushes hard, you can suddenly see the gap just widening. And as they say, the elastic snaps between the two bunches, and you could suddenly find a gap of 30 or 40 seconds, a minute by the time they get to the finish. And if you happen to be just maybe, not concentrating so much in the bunch, if you're caught at the wrong end of the bunch, you could find yourself a GC candidate like Quintana or Froome or Contador could find themselves losing very, very valuable time on only the second day. But that's kind of that's a possibility. It's but really when it comes to the important stages, you've got the first mountain stage comes quite early in the Auvergne region on the stage to Le Liron. And I know the stage extremely well because my wife's family are from the region. I've ridden the roads myself plenty of times, and there are some really nasty hills. I think it'll catch a lot of guys by surprise. I think they think that, the real mountains don't start until the Pyrenees in a few days, but this is a tough stage. And I think a lot of guys will be caught out by this. And then a couple of days later, they head down to the Pyrenees and into Andorra in Spain. And there's 3 stages, I think, in a row down in Spain and Andorra. And they're going to be the first signs of where we will see who will, as you say, win or lose the race. We'll see the guys who will be the strongest. We'll see some guys who maybe are lacking a bit of form, lacking strength, and we'll start to see the first separation in terms of the top 10 in the GC. But of course, then the middle of the second week, Mont Ventoux, it emerges up out the Provence. They call it the Beast of Provence. It's just an incredible climb to watch on TV. They arrive out of the tree line. At the top of the climb, it's like a lunar landscape. There's no plants and vegetation growing there. It's just bare rock. It'll be a spectacular stage. I think that's maybe next Thursday. Thursday week on the second week. And then the race comes down to the final 4 stages in the Alps with 3 very important mountain stages and an uphill time trial of only 17 kilometers, but there can be huge gaps between riders in just 17 kilometers.
So final question I've got to ask here, who is your favourite at this point to win, and is now the time to place the bet?
I leaned towards Nairo Quintana last year. He came close, he was second, but he was no match for Froome. But I'm really hoping that actually he can turn the tables this year. I think he offers just that little bit of extra value other than Froome. Froome obviously is the obvious pick, he's the favourite. But I think, over 3 weeks, it's a bit tight to be backing Froome at the price he is. And I think Nairo Quintana has stepped up this year and he's got a strong team. So he's my pick for the Tour this year.
All right, fantastic stuff. Ian O'Sullivan, thank you for joining us today.